What's up, everybody? It's I, Flamingo Writer here, and this is going to be a vlog style video because honestly, YouTube hates me. And honestly, I should hate YouTube too because they won't let me see if I could show clips or anything, so I have to restart this video all over again. Thanks again, YouTube. Anyways, today we're gonna be starting a new series, and hopefully this will be the last series so nothing can be too discombobulated. Welcome to Dark Flamingo writings, where I talk about different type of media that needs to be discussed, whether bad or for worse, they need to be talked about. So let's talk about Ren and Stimpy for a sec. Ren and Stimpy is a show that I'm sure a lot of us grew up with. And by the time the 90s were hitting, this was a show that, out of all the other shows besides SpongeBob, Hey Arnold, and That's Told by Ginger and the like, I have to fully admit, I was a huge fan of this year's show when it first was on my VHS collection. And honestly, I still love a lot of this year's show. Yeah, I do have other favorite 90s shows, but I usually watched it reruns or sometimes the combination of having something like, say, on a piracy website, because honestly, though, I don't really have that much to go through with these year tapes. And while I don't have them anymore because I don't want to get into what happened with my VHS collection, it's worth pointing out that I still enjoy the original show. Yeah, they had their ups and downs. I mean, let's be honest. The only time a lot of people still remember the show was mostly for its combination duo, but honestly, the show wasn't all that bad for the most part. Yeah, with John Krzyzewski and with what's going on, though, I think it's about time I say that this was definitely the case where a lot of people were kind of saying it didn't age well. I will admit some things don't age well, but I do have a lot of episodes I still enjoy and look back on when I was a kid. So yeah, this actually was one of those things that I still love to this day. And while I admit, yeah, the later episodes weren't anywhere as good as the first two seasons, in my opinion, I still enjoy parts of it. Part of me does enjoy it though, but when I say I have to do a vlog style, I'm pretty much going to show a picture of the series and tell you guys my thoughts on it necessarily. Trust me, it's going to make sense, but for now, I think it's only time if I talk about the adult version of this year's show. What's that? There's an adult series version of Ren and Stimpy? That cannot be! Yeah, I really think it's safe to say I need to give you guys my history before we go any further. I was only about a small bit of a kid when this show came out, but while I was a 2000s kid and I didn't really have any time to watch the adult party cartoon, I have to say, I really feel bad for the people who did watch this, though. If you're familiar with Mr. Enter, or Phantom Strider, or Gem Reviews, or pretty much anybody who's talked about Ren and Stimpy's adult party cartoon, you already know how infamous it is. Especially because this is one of those shows that was a bad idea from the start. Like, let's be honest though, guys. The show itself... Okay, I'm just gonna say this right here and now. I'm gonna give you guys the premise of what's it about and basically work from there, though. So, without further ado, let's talk about adult party cartoon and see what lies in store. Hooray! Seriously, YouTube, you really fucking piss me off when you don't want me to show clips, but I'm sure a vlog style video is pretty much going to be guaranteed to be something. At least my audience is not that huge, but what the fuck ever. Anyways, I'm going to talk about Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon. For those who don't know, Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon used to air on the block known as Spike TV. Now, while I admit I haven't seen Spike TV, I myself don't have that much attachment to it, though. I mean, yeah, I did see some shows on there, but unfortunately, I didn't really see a lot of them. This was due to the fact that I either had school at the time, or my dad was pretty much watching a lot of stuff at the time when stuff was on there. I mean, I do recall watching Bar Rescue on there, and that was a good show, at least to me. I mean, yeah, I still remember raging like hell every time I watched that show. You're talking to Dark Flamingo right now, guys. But because this series wanted to do so well, unfortunately, they had a cartoon programming block for adults. And before you say anything, I get it. A cartoon animation block for adults is nothing new. Hell, Adult Swim and Fox had this running on for Well, though, and they still do to this day. Well, I know Adult Swim does, but I don't know about Fox, so I can't really give you my judgment on there. But because the adult shows they had on there, unfortunately, none of the shows there were any good like that. There was Gary the Rat, Stripperella, and of course, the adult party cartoon. Neither one which succeeded. It makes sense that they wanted to do something made for adult men, for a demographic, to show that, this is really edgy and mature. Let's put into it though. The problem is not that it's edgy and mature, it's just that none of these shows show any sort of that. And I'm not saying that you can't do anything with edgy and matureness, but the problem with something like this is really mind-boggling because, well, let's go over some of these shows. Gary the Rat is, well, what happens when you have BoJack Horseman and erase all of its charm? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you already know what I'm gonna do so already. I tried watching one episode, and let me tell you, it was, shall we say, not as good as I thought it would be, though. I did hear about it, but honestly, though, the thing I can say about this show is that I don't have that much to say other than it's boring. The other show was called Stripperella, which was created by Stan Lee. Yes, that's Stan Lee, who gave us Spider-Man. And as such, though, he really tries a little too hard to make his quote-unquote adult animated superhero series work. Or as I like to call Stripperella, more on what happens when, you know what, I'm just gonna say this. It's basically Barbed Wire if it were made into an animated adult series. Yeah, if you don't know what that is, I implore you not to look it up if you're under 18. But the one show that was one that I wanted to talk about, the adult party cartoon, yeah, I still thought this was a bad, fucked up idea on the creator's part. Now, John Kay, while I don't really have that much to say on him, mostly because Blame It on George got their own introductions on the characters and all such, but I think what really boggles my mind is how much Nickelodeon seems to have a lot more dark things behind the scenes. And yes, I am fully aware about Dan Schneider's latest documentary about what happened. Shut up. But the one thing that really gets to me about Adult Party Cartoon, yeah, this was pretty much doomed from the start. Not just because it was made for adults, but because the series itself was really not really going into something like this, though. I mean, who in their fucking right mind would think that this was a good idea? Unless you're one of those fanfic writers who think, hey, if we make it for adults, anything is possible. Okay, I will admit that is far from the truth, but it's far from saying that you can still make something for adults just without the immature mindset. And spoiler alert, that's what the show is in a nutshell. You could say that I could be drawing into it, but I can't show any clips because fucking YouTube, again, didn't want to show any of my clips, and the audio was fucking terrible. Yeah, I had to delete the video, so I'm just gonna do vlog-style videos for the Dark Flamingo writing, so I do really wish to do something about it. I'm sorry, guys. I really wish I could do something about this, but I don't have that much of a big audience, but at the same time, it's still fucking bullshit to go through this again. Seriously, YouTube, you don't like it when I use my videos, you don't like it when I try to use clips, you don't like anything I do, what the fuck? And yeah, that's really what I have to say, though. So, without further ado, let's talk about Adult Party Cartoon and see where it really failed. So, for those who haven't seen the original series, would probably know what you're getting into. Basically, take a plot of the series and go run with it, right? Well, kind of. Ren and Stimpy did have that formula, but it also had something else to it, though. Good writing, good characters, good stories, and what's more, they had plot to go with them. Not the literal kind, but still. What I'm trying to say here is that basically when I was watching this show as a kid, Ren and Stimpy was my shit growing up. At least for the most part. Yeah. When I was a little kid, I didn't really get to watch after season 2 of the series. I'm not saying that I didn't really have too much access to it, but the only VHS tapes I had were seasons 1 and 2, and I didn't really have that much opportunities to watch the series when it was on seasons 3 to 4 and 5. I mean, my folks and I were pretty much not having a lot of cable, so I had to work with what I had, though. But while watching season 3 and 4 and 5 after John Krasinski left, yeah, I'm just gonna say this right here and now. They weren't all that bad, but they just were kind of meh to me. But I hope you enjoy my positive treatment because the rest of the time you're gonna hear me do is bitching. Yeah, there's no way I could show this with a grain of sugar, but honestly, that's what happens when you watch something that was disgusted, though. So let's talk about Ren and Stimpy Adult Party cartoon, shall we? For those who honestly don't know about this show, it's basically Ren and Stimpy if done badly. That's saying a lot. Yeah, Ren and Stimpy Adult Party cartoon is one of those ideas that sounds like something what would happen if a writer, myself included, happened to be so immature, we say, you know what? We have a show to do. Let's make it as immature as possible. And I would argue about that, except the fact that this show was even intending to do pretty well is pretty much a guaranteed red flag in my eyes. I'll be honest with you guys. This show made me have the flu when watching it for the first time. I should have seen that coming, given the fact that a lot of people, especially myself, wanted to watch this show if they were curious, but I kind of regret doing so because the first time I started hearing about the show was 13. Sort of. Yeah, I said this to one of my friends when talking to her, and I really meant to say was I was really curious about seeing an episode known as Simpy's Pregnant. And spoiler alert, I'm gonna get into that in a bit though. But I will say though, the first time I started hearing that title, I thought at first it was some kind of fanfic, like a creepy pasta fanfic. And let's be honest, male pregnancy, I'm starting to notice that's a trend with a lot of Nickelodeon shows. Or in this case, adult shows. You know what? Screw it. I'm not gonna go into detail with that. So you're probably wondering, though, how was I ever getting influenced in the show if I ever wanted to see the adult series? Sadly, that is a mistake I truly made on my part. You see, guys, I actually didn't know this, but watching the show for myself, I didn't know anything about it until I turned 17. Back when I was still looking up on that episode, Stimpy's Pregnant, because I thought at first it was some kind of also, not just a fanfic, but also some kind of, get this, some kind of irredeemable little creepypasta just waiting to be unleashed though. And yes, I know some people are gonna say that creepypastas have been the norm, not just with Ren and Stimpy, but with a lot of other shows. But here's the thing though, usually creepypastas are never my expertise. Now before you say anything, I get it. They're not made for everybody in mind. But watching this for myself, I think I have to apologize to Mr. Enter, Phantom Strider, Gem Reviews, and whoever the hell started doing something like this because they pretty much were doomed from watching this just for doing this for their patrons or viewers or whatever you have it though. I know they don't do as much nowadays, especially what's going on. Seriously, John K. That's more into what made the show look like it's something else though, mind. But what I'm trying to say here is that this series had a lot of things that were up against the show already. And it's not as though that you don't see anything about the show. I mean, technically this show did seem like it would have a lot more potential for very few viewers. Like, maybe about 1%. That 1% being Chris Waluski himself. Yeah, apparently, from what I've heard, a lot of people say he wanted this to be an adult series, and what's more, he wanted this show for himself better than the original. Then why did you make it for kids to begin with? For that matter, why did you even bother doing this to begin with? I'm sure a lot of people could stress enough that they were trying to do something with that, but if you want to do something that's made for adults, I want to not understand what's going on here by just saying, yeah, we know it's immature, but we don't care. That's one thing I have to say about some of the adult shows and some of the kids shows in their favor. While you could make the argument that some of the humor, as hit or miss it can be at times, there was still charm to the characters. Still something you could get around to. And as such, though, Adult Party Cartoon does the opposite of that. Instead of giving its charm, and yes, I know I have other shows that are in the making to make it look like there's no charm into them as well, though there was still a little more balance into some of these here shows. Let me give you a few, for example. Remember Daria? Yeah, that show is for adults, but do you know what's the one thing they had there? And if you say good writing, guess what? You get a cookie. If I burned it, stop asking for cookies, god damn it! Okay, what's really bothering me though is how much this really irritates me. Not just because that Daria is also a lot better, because I actually watched that show at the same age and there was nothing about it. Maybe I'll do a video about Daria, but we'll have to see. Actually, come to think of it, ask me to do whatever good shows you think should be talked about on my channel, because I want to talk about good shows too. And I don't know what series I'll put them into, but I'll have to see when I get the chance. Anyways, back to Daria, however. While the show was aimed at adults, the writing in of itself, though, was not really something that you could say, yeah, it's really something that goes into bloody disaster after bloody disaster. No. Apparently there was something more to that, though. It had good stories, good characters, and what's more, it had a consistent tone. And before you say anything, yes, I know APC tries to make it a consistent tone after one episode to the next, but the problem I see here is that, believe it or not, this show was supposed to have more episodes, and only 6 of them were actually made, though. Yeah, I didn't know this going in, but after seeing Phantom Strider's video and after looking it up, unfortunately, it is true, guys. They were fortunately going to make more episodes of the series, but because the show was so canned by a lot of people who grew up with the show or just didn't think it was anything to judge by, the series was quietly canceled off. Because no one else could put up with it, though. Honestly, how can you put up with a show like this? Because personally, it doesn't really flow my taste and expertise in something else, though. Before we get into any further, though, let's talk about the technical stuff, though. And like I said, while I can't show you clips of it, I can only give you my vlog about it. So yeah, this is going to be like a Dark Flamingo vlog series. So if you don't like that, I don't want anything to do with it with YouTube, because they always say you're doing copyright, Flamingo. Anyways, back to the technical aspects. The technical aspects, though, as such, though, let's talk about the one thing I need to talk about. Well, this, and aside from the few things I want to talk about, let's talk more about how this series had the temerity to ruin its characters. Now, if you were anyone like me who grew up with Ren and Stimpy, you already know the drill. Ren is always hyperactive, but still angering, but he still had his charm by making his likability more tolerable. And Stimpy, while stupid, still had his moments of showing his own brightness of ingenuity to help his friend out. And yes, I know in the later seasons they kind of flanderized these characters to a degree, but I'd argue that I could take those over what's come of this series, because this series has the audacity to make the characters as unlikable as they could. With Ren being the anger-inducing, he just comes off as an abusive asshole, and it's not played for laughs either. Apparently, after so many of the torture he puts his Stimpy into, it's really fucking appalling to see him torture Stimpy for no reason other than he just wants to get something out of it, though. Or maybe they're trying to make it play for laughs. Actually, come to think of it, this slapstick is so mean-spirited that it makes me wonder if this was supposed to be slapstick at all. And I know there have been shows where there have been angering protagonists and the like, Mo from the Three Stooges and Eddie from Ed and Eddie, but those two, while they do have those moments, they still had a lot more freedom at their place, and what's more, they had a lot more to do with their characters. Unfortunately, Ren has none of those in this series. It comes off as, say, you know that anger-inducing character that had anger issues but still had its charm? Yeah, you might as well erase it all and never give them character development. Yeah, the character development, if you can call it that, is more like character derailment in this series, because most of the time it's just so episodic to the point where it's really come off as, say, yeah, you had your fun with these characters, but let's put them all into having something else, though. As well as, say, for example, how they wrote Ren as a very piece of shit all the time. Yeah, I'm not sure how many people felt about Ren, but while he did have his moments, he still had those moments where he still cared about his friend Stimpy. Speaking of Stimpy, though, while he is better of the two, that's not saying a lot. Especially because in this series he's homophobic and he doesn't do anything to stop Ren from torturing him. And I know some people are gonna say that maybe he can't stand up for himself, but the homophobic part is something I could not stand. First off, why are you still with him? And second, even if you could ignore the homophobic bullshit, though, that still doesn't show any anything like that, despite the fact that you yourself are still with this piece of shit, no matter what happens in the first place. And it's even more anger-inducing when you realize that Stimpy is going through hell. I know he was like that in the original series, but at least he was punished for the right reasons. Here, though, you might as well just say he's punished because comedy. And honestly, the comedy itself is... Do I even need to say anything about the comedy? It's disgusting. It's anger-inducing, and it's too vulgar for my taste. And believe it or not, the episodes... Okay, it's about time I say this right here and now. If you've been missing, if you've actually watched the show like I did, you may have noticed something. All these episodes, or at least, at the very least, most of them, have one thing in common. They're really rehashing the plots from the original series. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say this right here and now. Yes, there are shows, not just this one, is SpongeBob included. Now, you could make the argument that there were times where they do rehash plots, but I'd argue that if you're gonna rehash a plot, at least make it minimum to the point where you got inspiration and at least try something new with that. In this series, it's basically saying, yeah, you know you like these characters, but instead of just making them who they are, especially because you want to do anything with them instead, you instead wanted to make them look like, well, considering that this is really an adult series, you might as well just make it so anger-inducing you probably have from the spine of cord to do that no matter what happens. And then, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna say this right here and now. Before you say anything, I get some people are gonna say that maybe they were just trying to do something new with these characters, but honestly though, rehashing the episodes is not gonna work in any favors though, because like it or not, this isn't the only time they always do this though. Rehashing the plot is one thing, but if you're gonna make it look like something that it's gonna be something that you want to do though, I'd rather say that you'd rather have an episode instead of rehashing its plot, you might as well just think of something on your own. Otherwise, it's like I said in the inspiration versus plagiarism video, you're pretty much copying everything about it and not doing anything new to have something with that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Plagiarism is not gonna get you anywhere. Sooner or later, everyone's gonna pass every judgment on you just for having that to own separate mind space on that. And before you say anything, I know some people are gonna say to me it's hard to think of your own episode, which, yeah, it's not easy. As someone who's been writing, I can definitely tell you it's not as easy as slicing a cake. But what's really bothering me about this is how much it really deteriorates your writing, though. Maybe they couldn't think of any other episodes, but a lot of these episodes are just the same thing, though. Let's go over some of them. First, there's Ren Seeks Help, the most infamous of them all. And I'm not sure about you guys, but it's basically the same episode, just with Ren seeking help from a psychologist who turns out to be the horse, yes, one of those horses, and somehow decides to do whatever the hell you want because they want to bumble the fuck over. Yeah, do I even need to say anything about it? Mr. Enter already did a video on it, and I'm not sure if you want to spend the most of your time watching it, though, because of how much it's really scaring to see, but that's on you guys if you want to see it or not. I will not want to see it because it's pretty much what it sounds like inside of that. The other episode I want to talk about is, of course, Fire Dogs 2. Yeah, notice how I said Fire Dogs 2. If you don't know, it's basically Fire Dogs if it had Ralph Bakshi in it. And look, as an animation fan, I love Ralph Bakshi. But this was just scratching the surface. And I know some of you guys are going to say Ralph Bakshi was actually made aware from this tier, especially with Mighty Mouse, and Chris Faluski himself already did something like that, but again, this feels like torture. Also, the gross out doesn't help my case, so why the fuck not? And there's also the last episode, Stimpy's pregnant, the one I wanted to get into. And let me tell you, remember that sad episode from the series called Stimpy's Fart? Yeah, despite the title being, well, disgusting to talk about, I mean, it makes me want to gag. Ugh. But it also serves as something else, though. Despite that title, it's also worth pointing out they had a sad story about Stimpy trying to find his fart. Like, kind of how a mother is trying to find his home while still finding his own mother and find the way back to it though. Say what you will about the original episode, while it was pretty much cringy to say that title, I know it is for me, it still had a lot of things going for it as is. What's more, it also had a lot more temerity to actually show they had a lot more free will though. With these episodes, like I said, most of them are really rehashing plots from the original series. And I don't mind people rehashing the plots, but if you're gonna make the argument that this is something that you want to do, especially when can't come up with the original idea, that's not something you want. It's also pretty sad you can't even think of your own episodes when coming right down to it though. Aside from that though, this show also had something else though. You may have noticed how I didn't mention also the theme song. Well, if you can call it that. Also, the theme song itself, if I'm being perfectly honest, it's basically what happens when you have a series and then say, you know that original theme song you had for a kids show? Yeah. And then just put out the title card just to make it like that. That's pretty lazy, especially because that's the only way to do so already. And yes, I know I'm gonna compare this to a different series, and I will get to it in a different episode maybe, but Samurai Jack also had this as well. Yeah, Samurai Jack was made for kids, and they had something for the Adult Swim show. But here's the thing: do you know why I don't bitch about that? You want to know why? Because they didn't go over that score. It's also true to its formula, and they had the better writing. I will admit, a lot of people were divisive over season 5, but guess what? I'd rather take season 5 over that instead of taking this god awful piece of shit. Yeah, as you can no doubt tell, I'm really angry at this. Not just because Ren Stimpy Adult Party cartoon was already doomed to fail from the beginning, but it's also worth pointing out no one needed this to begin with. If they were doing a revival or a reboot of the show, I would be honestly fine with that. And honestly, so would one of my fans though. When I first saw this series, especially for doing this video, I could not muster up how much this series, and I do want to say ill-gotten series, trying to intend. It's really no wonder why it didn't attract an audience. Or for that matter, it's no wonder why a lot of people didn't think it would do anything like that. I know a few years ago they were planning to do another series with Ren and Stimpy, but I really can't tell you much about it considering I don't know if it got canceled, if it got a hiatus, or anything like that. But I guess we'll never know though. Yeah, as you can no doubt tell, I was really not looking forward to doing this episode. Not just because of how much it insulted the original, but because of what things are about to come though. I could go over, like, say, about how people already know Billy West, the original voice actor for Stimpy, didn't come back, and to be honest, he was right. This series was doomed to fail, because the original series, while he was in it, he also provided both Ren and Stimpy's voices after Chris Faluski left. And before you say anything, that shows how much he knows how much he always does already, though. Yeah, Stimpy may be stupid, but at least its voice actor is smart enough to know what goes on, though. Yeah, I know I haven't said everything I wanted, though, but for this video, I think we're about done here. Ren and Stimpy Adult Party cartoon, overall, is not a good show. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, fucking nobody, asked for this to begin with. Now, originally, I was gonna plan on doing another video with one of these shows I had on the poll, but I'm gonna take a break from these here bad shows, and hopefully by the next time you see me, it probably won't be as torturing as this, because, well, I'm gonna be on doing some of these here work videos and such like that though, and in the making time though, I'm gonna also be spending time with my family for Easter, and probably call my girlfriend at that time though. Hey, I might as well do something. So yeah, as you can tell, this is definitely the video I wanted to show you guys, and hopefully when I do get to do another video, it won't be as grotesque as this. I know I have other to do with Dark Flamingo writings, but until then, thank you all so much for listening to this vlog, and I'll see you all next time. And as always, stay flamingo-tastic. See you, everybody.